Welcome to Frosted Bake Shop, and for this week's cookie class in a box, we're going to be doing our trick-or-treat themed. Your kit will include everything you need to decorate our cookies easily. Please enjoy. For today's trick-or-treat set, we're going to start with our actual trick-or-treat plaque. You can cut your white bag to about a medium tip because we're really just using this for flooding today. So you don't really need any fine details that we are going to worry about having it, too thick. We're going to start flooding by just going around the edge of our cookie. And this is a flood consistency, so just be careful that you don't go too close to your edges so that it doesn't run over. And we're gonna go follow the edge around your whole cookie. I'm gonna go a couple times. Then I'm going to make my grid. For those that have decorated, this is my preferred way to flood. If you haven't, I just do this and then I fill in sort of back and forth to get even sections. And then we're going to go back, and you can use your toothpick to kind of swirl it around and make sure that it really is even. If you have a scribe, you can use a scribe like I am. I gave toothpicks for people at home that might not be have those tools yet. Either works just as well. I don't use toothpicks because I do so many cookies. I'd be throwing away thousands of toothpicks. And then you can just give it a quick little shake. And we're gonna let this set up so that we can go back and do our message on top a little later. Now we're gonna work on our jack-o'-lantern, which is gonna be a few steps. The first thing we wanna do is get the black that we're gonna see underneath. It's gonna be sort of sunken in. Our orange pumpkin is gonna sit higher. So we just want the black to make sure we get far enough on all edges so that when we do the mouth and the eyes, it is already coated. And then we're gonna let this sit aside for a few minutes. Just to firm up a little bit, we can pipe over it shortly enough, but we want to be able to scratch the face into it so we have a guide for making our pumpkin later. We're gonna go back to our white and we're gonna work on our pumpkin. The eyes and the cheeks of this pumpkin are going to be wet on wet, so you wanna make sure that you have your black and your pink pretty close by. Your both can be cut to like smaller, because we want to make sure that the black and the pink don't sort of get too big on his little details of his face. So I would do both to a pretty small tip. So the first thing we're going to start with is our outline. And again, don't go too close to your edges. You can always drag your icing to the edge, but once it starts running over, it's sort of hard to keep up with cleaning up the edges if you've just gone overboard. And we'll work on the end here. So now we want to do his face, and we want to keep the features, you know, pretty tight together. So the first thing we're going to do is work on his eyes. Now see how there's like almost like a little bump on each side? We're going to go right in the center of that and just a little dots. And then his cheeks will be a little lower and wider. Now you can either do the mouth now, or you can come back and do it when it's dried so that it sits above, but I'm gonna just do it now. Now for a little extra detail, I want to add some orange so that it coordinates better with the rest of our set. So take your flooding orange and cut it open to a pretty small opening. And we're going to just do some dots. And when this is set up, we're going to come back and do so that he's holding a flag. So the first thing we want to do on our candy is the ends where just like the candy wrapper would be tied. We're going to come back later and do some detailing on top of the dried icing, but for now, we just want to do these ends. So this is where the end would be tied, twisted. And then we're going to come back and we're going to do that center part. So now we're going to work on our pumpkin. We're going to start with the orange sections. There's 3, the 2 sides and then 1 in the middle. And we're going to add some pink polka dots just so that it looks a little brighter and cuter. So the first thing we're going to do is our outline. And you're gonna kind of just do a curve shape and a curve shape. This is gonna end up being orange. we're gonna outline the outside. So now let's start in the middle. I'm gonna kind of just go around the outside. Again, do this. Follow the curve. I'm gonna give it a quick shake so that it settles. Now I'm gonna add my polka dots. When you do polka dots, as much as they sort of look random, you wanna have a little bit of a pattern or plan. So these spaces are pretty tiny, so as long as they're sort of well spaced out, and then the last one is gonna be in the middle. Now this one you have a little bit more space to plan. So I would start with one in the middle and then 2 on either side. And then you're gonna go up, 1 in the middle, 2 on either side, and again. And then we're gonna come back and add our pink. I've included this little stencil for you to do your face of your jack-o'-lantern. If you prefer to just freehand it when we get to that part that we're going to be doing the orange, you can skip this step and just freehand, leaving the black background so that you can see your face. But for now, I'm gonna use this to show you. So you wanna make sure it's sort of centered in this bottom part. This is where the top of your pumpkin would sort of naturally end, and then there'll be candy here, and then the handle here. So we wanna make sure that our pumpkin is low enough, our face is low enough to make sense. So I'm gonna just very gently scratch following my stencil. Again, you can use your toothpick, just very lightly. So it looks like, for some reason, this side of my now your black might still be a little wet, which is fine. That's all gonna get covered up by the orange. But this, you can see, you just have a guide so that you can do your face. So the first thing we're gonna actually do is not worry about the face right now. We're gonna do the candy at the top, what would be the inside and kind of spilling over the rim. Now you wanna make sure when you're doing this, you're in control of your piping and where you're putting your candy. So I had kind of showed you where the top of our pumpkin is going to just follow that curve from side to side. And then we're going to do sort of a curved because this would be the opening of the top of the pumpkin. So that's what that shape should be. Now really, as much as we're flooding this and we want it to be even, this is really just the glue for our candy. What I'm gonna do, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to do, to make it easier for my cleanup, take a little paper towel and I'm gonna kind of lay it right against there. And I'll show you why. Now we're gonna take our sprinkles. Little handful, 3 or 4, whatever, and sort of slowly fill them in. For some reason, I'm going to even them out. If you notice, and this is being a little particular, but I didn't get a lot of orange, so I'm going to go back and make sure that all the colors are, they don't have to be perfectly even, but it's going to be pretty obvious if you have no orange or all pink or whatever. Okay, now the reason I did that paper towel was so that they didn't kind of spill down into my pumpkin too much, in case the black was still a little too wet. And I might kind of fix these a little bit so that they're standing sort of more up. Okay, and we're gonna put that aside. And this we're gonna work from top to bottom. So the top of our candy corn is white. And these don't have to be, you know, perfectly divided, but I'm kind of eyeballing a third, a third, a third. Again, just outlining, going back in. Now, next color, orange. Now I'm gonna start on my sides, go a third, third, we have our candy corn. Now we're gonna jump back to our pumpkin. We're gonna flood those empty spots with our pink to coordinate with the polka dots. And what I'm gonna do is sort of start over the top. And I want to build up this icing so that I have nice definition between those spots. And now we're going to do the other side. Give it a little shake. And now we'll let that dry a little bit and we'll come back and we'll detail that, the top of the stem. Now we're gonna take a little break, let some of this flooding set up before we move on to our next phase of decorating. And if you have a fan, put them in front of a fan. If you don't, I would just give a little bit more time, but maybe like 30 minutes to an hour. And as long as like the wet icing is really super shiny and you can see as it crusts over, it gets a little duller. As long as it's dulled over, you should be fine to start the next step of the project. So see you back in a little bit. So I'm back. It's been about 30 minutes and my cookies look like they are crusted over enough that we can start on the next phase of our decorating. You just obviously want to be cautious in handling your cookies to make sure that they are in fact firm enough that when you are moving them around, you don't inadvertently bump into them and end up with a dent or a piece broken off of your icing. We're gonna do this almost like a little pinwheel, and I'm gonna draw on here so that you have an idea of where I'm going with this, but just so that you have a plan of when you're piping. So we're gonna do 6 sections and alternating the colors, so 3 colors total. Okay, so our 3 colors are the white, orange, and yellow. Honestly, you could do any of your 3 colors. You have enough icing that you can mix and match however you think would look cute. Now I'm doing this the same way we did our candy corn, which is we're working one color after the next, and you want to just make sure that you move quickly enough that you don't have any weird lines where one color ends and one begins. And because you're working wet on wet next to each other, just be, work slowly and be careful that you're not running colors into each other. Just give it a little shake. And then we're gonna go back after and add some raised details with our orange icing that's thicker. It's a piping consistency. But for now, we're gonna let that crust over so that we can work on top of it later. So now we're gonna work on our pumpkin, our jack-o'-lantern. When you're doing your flooding around the face, remember, flooding icing is going to spread pretty dramatically. So although we have our template, you don't want to work necessarily right on those lines. You want to work on the outside of them so that when your icing spreads, it doesn't spread so much into your face that you lose your details. So I'm going to first start by outlining my face. So that's gonna be the part that you see behind the orange. Now we're gonna form the actual pumpkin. So the first thing I'm gonna do is start by doing one nice line for the top of our pumpkin. And now we're gonna do the border. Again, not too close to your edge. And now we're gonna fill in. And then just be careful, you're not going down to the cookie. You don't want to pull up that black underneath. This is really just to fill in any missing spots there. Like here. And you can see how we got that nice effect in dimension with that black underneath. We're gonna come back and do our handle in a little bit once that orange sets up a little bit. We're ready to do some of our detailing. So we're gonna add just a stem. You really could use any color. I'm doing black just because, I don't know, it fits in with the rest of the set. First thing you're gonna do, and pressing very lightly, you don't want a really big, thick black string or a rope or whatever it is that he's holding for your banner. You really just want it to be as thin as possible. And now when we do our flags, I would start with the center, and it doesn't matter what order, what colors you do in order, just for spacing wise, I think starting with the center is always like a good plan. So your flag is basically gonna just be a triangle. And there's our ghost. So we're gonna work on our piping first. You're gonna make sure you use your piping bag that has the thick orange icing and cut a nice small tip that is gonna give you thin enough lines to do nice text. So if you have to cut it a couple times, practice on the side. You just want to make sure that you have the right size tip before you even start working on your cookie. Sometimes if it's too small, it gets a little shaky. If it's too big, it might not fit. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do is start with the trick, and then we'll come back and do the middle, and then we'll do trick and treat first. Now for spacing purposes, if it helps you to do the middle, the sides, whatever. I'm gonna kind of show you how I do that. So I know that my K is gonna fit in that little corner. And when you're doing the bottom, think of this horizontal line that you're working on. And now the center. And now our other T is gonna start on this edge here. And it's gonna come across where our T here finishes on that. I'm gonna double up this T like I did on the top. And our center letter is our E. You want to make sure that you're keeping your lower letters the same height as your top. And now, I'm gonna write the word or, but in cursive. Do that centered. And now we're gonna do our little decorations on either side, which is a candy corn and then a little wrapped candy the way you did your cookie. So this is flooding icing that you're working on. It's going to spread, so use it sparingly. So my candy corn, I'm gonna start with my white. And this is definitely a place where you're gonna use your toothpick or scribe to shape. Okay, so there's your candy corn. And now for our wrapper, we're gonna do just yellow center. And I'm gonna use my writing icing to do the edges, the wrapper where it pulls. And instead of doing all those pinwheels, I'm gonna just do like a swirl in the middle. So there's your plaque. Now we're gonna just add our handle. And even though this cookie kind of flares out at the top, I'm gonna just do more of a rounded handle. You don't have to follow the shape of the cookie. You certainly can, but that wasn't my plan when I had designed this particular cookie. So I'm just gonna start on one side and just do a rounded top. And our jack-o'-lantern's done. So now you want to go back to your writing icing. And I'm going to just do some detailing on the edges of my wrapper. Again, one line following each of those points. And then I'm going to just outline. And now we have our candy.
Thank you for joining Frosted Bake Shop. I hope you had fun practicing your cookie decorating, and stay tuned for some of our new themed cookie classes coming up in the fall and winter.